Here's an alternative theory about Malcolm Reed. Welcome to Warp Factor 5, a Star Trek Rewatch podcast brought to you by TrekCore.com. I am your host, Alex Perry.
Velocity, Warp Factor 5.
Course and speed set, sir.
Warp Factor 5 is a Star Trek Rewatch podcast where each episode my guest and I discuss and rate the next 5 episodes of Star Trek in in-universe chronological order, beginning with the Enterprise NX-01 in the 22nd century and traveling forward from there. This time on Warp Factor 5, we are covering episodes from Star Trek Enterprise Season 2, set around 2152 in the timeline of Star Trek. Together, we'll dive deep into the next 5 episodes of Star Trek, their standout moments, how they contribute to the larger Star Trek story, and give each episode a Warp Factor ranking between 1 and 5. I hope you'll join us at home in rating each episode and picking your favorite moments from each episode block. And my guest this week is the co-host of the First Flight podcast. It's Abby Sommer. Abby, thank you for being on Warp Factor 5.
Well, thank you for asking me. It is always a joy to talk Trek with you, and I love Enterprise, so I was so excited to get assigned this block of episodes.
All right, Abby, I want to understand you a little better as a Star Trek fan. I mean, you host a Star Trek Enterprise podcast, so, I mean, maybe this is a redundant question, but also maybe not. So I'm going to ask it of you anyway. What is your favorite Star Trek series?
Okay, first of all, I just have to say, asking me a favorite anything is like asking me to pick a favorite child. Like, I'm so bad at it, not just with Star Trek, but with life. There's always qualifiers here, right? So, like,
Sure.
Here's what I'm going to say. I grew up with TNG. It was my first Star Trek. So I find that to kind of be like my home Trek. I can always go back there. I can always find something in there to make me feel whatever I want to feel at the moment. That's where my obsession started. However, Enterprise holds a really special place in my heart because it was going off on its brand new mission when I was finishing college, moving away from home, first real job, like starting myself out there. And it was something I looked forward to every single week. It was something that I was so into, even when it was very different than what had come before and very much the same as what had come before. So it's definitely up there. But I can't not mention the fact that I love modern Trek so much as well. And Discovery has a very special place for me. I have done a lot of rewatching and discussing that. It just hits me in a different way than the other Treks. And so does Lower Decks, because that is what I watch when I need to go to bed and have a good mood. And it just always is joyous. So I'm going to say those are my 4 favorite Treks, depending on mood. So I cheated. Sorry, but not sorry at all.
Great job picking 4 out of, 9 Star Trek series?
Yeah, well. But, when you've been a Star Trek fan for decades, it's hard to pick a favorite because
Sure.
Everything, especially with all the new stuff that we've had, like, I don't want to take away from what has been there for me for the majority of my life. But some of the new stuff is so good and hitting me differently because I'm in a different phase of my life. I don't want to take anything away from that either. So more is better all the time with Star Trek. So that's my answer for that one.
Hey, I'm on board with that. More is always better. All right, let's get to talking about this week's episodes.
Telling me you're some kind of a time traveler?
That's one way of putting it. Maybe this will help clear things up. This is how we keep an eye on what's going on. You might call it a temporal observatory.
Well, in today's episode, we will be discussing episode 1 to 5 of Star Trek Enterprise Season 2, Shockwave Part 2, Carbon Creek, Minefield, Dead Stop, and A Night in Sickbay. These episodes aired between September 18th and October 16th, 2002. On October 2nd, John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo began a 3-week shooting spree in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, killing 10 people and injuring 3 in apparently random attacks at gas stations, parking lots, and storefronts. Within days, the region was in a state of sustained public fear, with schools on lockdown and residents afraid to go about ordinary daily activities. Congress debated and passed the authorization for use of military force against Iraq, York. President Bush signed it into law on October 16th, setting the country on the path towards the invasion that would begin the following March. Internationally, on October 12th, terrorists detonated 3 bombs in the resort town of Kuta on the Indonesian island of Bali, killing 202 people, the deadliest terrorist attack since September 11th, and former President Jimmy Carter was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize on October 11th. At the box office, Red Dragon, with Anthony Hopkins returning as Hannibal Lecter, opened at number 1 on October 4th and held the top spot through the end of this window, with Sweet Home Alabama and the still-running My Big Fat Greek Wedding filling out the top 3. On television, the new fall season was underway, with CBS's CSI emerging as the breakout hit of the 2002-2003 season. Abby, you mentioned a little bit that, this was sort of a particular phase of life for you. Tell me a little bit your memories about watching these episodes of Enterprise Season 2. Like, where in life were you? What were you up to?
All right. So I'm a teacher. I had just started my 2nd year of teaching, which feels like an entire lifetime ago. I was living in a different place than where I live now, far away from family. I was trying to still put down some roots, and the world felt like it was falling apart, right? Like there was a lot going on.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty grim, set of things that happened in this 4-week period.
I was thinking, I'm like, man, I hope that at some point you're like, oh, and the Olympics happened. It was positive and wonderful. I mean, not this time period in the fall, but man, that's a lot of the world. And I was just talking with my co-host Chris on our pod about how it's interesting to see people who watched Enterprise when it was on, because everybody's like, oh, it was a reaction to 9/11. It was a reaction to 9/11. And it was definitely of its time, maybe more than anything other than TOS has been, right? But it also had that Star Trek hope in it. And then it was interesting the people who watched it when it aired and then loved it, or watched it, didn't love it, and are now coming back to it, seem to have a different take on how Enterprise was dealing with this type of talking about the world than people who didn't live through 9/11 are seeing it. It's just an interesting little thing. And I think it's the more history that you have, the more that you can see that they are deliberately making parallels sometimes, and they are deliberately setting things up that pay off later on, and how that changes as you go through the series. And it was just interesting to think about, where I was so young, and I was so hopeful and so excited about this new phase of my life. And I heard somebody say that it was globally terrible, but locally okay. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of what it felt like in my life right then. It felt globally terrible, but locally I was doing okay. And I remember the couch I used to sit on to watch these episodes. I had my VCR going. It was early days of posting the clips and the previews on the internet. So I would watch those little 30-second previews on the UPN website a bazillion times and trying to freeze frame stuff. I was into it. And this set of episodes didn't disappoint. So there's a lot to talk about.
Warp 2. Warp 5.
All right, well, let's get into talking about our 5 episodes. We are going to discuss each episode and give them a warp factor rating, ranging from warp factor 1 up to the coveted warp factor 5. And if you want to join in at home and rank these episodes along with us, half warp factors are acceptable. We begin with Shockwave Part 2. As the Suliban take the crew hostage, Archer disappears off the ship. While stuck in the 31st century, Archer and Daniels work to find a way to get back to Enterprise and repair the timeline. So Shockwave Part 2 picks up right at the cliffhanger of Part 1. Silik's like, where the hell is Archer? And everyone's just like, well, we don't really know. So then the Suliban come aboard the ship and lock everybody in their quarters. And you have this great, ensemble moment of, trying to break out. And T'Pol gets tortured by the Suliban. And Archer's in the future trying to figure out, how the hell are we going to get out of here? Because the time portals have been destroyed. And they hit upon this idea of basically using the same kind of technology that Future Guy uses to communicate back in time, to communicate back with T'Pol, who's post-torture is a little bit delirious and not really sure why she's seeing a giant Jonathan Archer head in the middle of her quarters.
Why aren't you on a monitor?
Yeah, right. He gives her a set of instructions, and the episode kind of plays out from there, where the Enterprise crew basically, it's a big con job. They trick Silic into using a piece of Daniel's technology that he left behind after Cold Front to facilitate Archer's ability to travel back in time from the 31st century to the 22nd century, punch Silic in the mouth, and then not quite call it a day, because they still have to deal with the fact that the Vulcans really want Enterprise's mission to be cancelled. Archer gives a fairly terrible speech about a gazelle, and then T'Pol gives a really incredible speech about why the Enterprise mission shouldn't be cancelled and the Vulcans should back off, and everybody goes about their merry way. Abby, what do you think about Shockwave Part 2?
All right. First off here, a little aside. I have talked about each of these episodes in depth on my podcast for more than an hour. So I am going to try really hard to not say everything I want to say, because obviously that would take way more time than we have here. But anyone who wants to hear that, go look up First Flight. We're on all the places you find your podcasts. Plenty to say, good stuff in there. But okay, I like this as a season opener, right? Like, I love the temporal Cold War. I love time travel stuff in general. It's one of my favorite flavors of Trek. I like the idea that things are mutable in the timelines. I like the idea that Daniels, who is a temporal agent, screws up, right? Like, he made a mistake, and now you see firsthand, this is what happens when you mess with time. Oops, suddenly all sorts of stuff doesn't exist that should exist or that did exist, and all the paradoxes. And I love that when we see Daniels and Archer in this one, and they're pretty much just the two of them for a big chunk of this episode, right? Forward in the destroyed future, and talking about how there used to be quantum discriminators in all the desks and pounding out old copper wires and reading real books in the library. And Daniel's always like treading that line of Archer going, oh, this book is about Romulans. Oh, don't read that one. Or why is it so important if I do this or that? Don't worry about it. How do I exist? Oh, it's fine. Like, he just brushes off all the temporal stuff, but feeds enough crumbs that you have more information than when you started. And it just makes me want more and more temporal Cold War. So I love that part. Not a huge fan of Daniels' outfit. Those time tubes get a lot of grief in my world.
It's the haircut for me. I can't get over how terrible the haircut is.
The haircut is really bad. It's very intense. But however, with like the curvy edges that it's got, it kind of mimics the time tubes that he's wearing, right? And the time tubes did get an upgrade from season 1 to season 2. They've got little like reflective blinky things going on now. It's better than it was. It's still terrible, but I love that part of the story. And I also love that this episode has something for everybody to do, right? I mean, not so much Floxy, hands of hypospray and all that, but I love that our crew is scrappy. I love that they're talking through the doorbells. Like, that is such a Trip Tucker moment, to just hack into the doorbells to be able to talk to people.
Going anywhere?
That's wonderful fun. And I like a good romp. And I like that they figured out a smart plan that Malcolm took the fall, and like, oh, speaking of torture, not just to Paul, but Malcolm gets the snot beat out of him literally in this one, to give them time and to make this seem real. This is our crew coming together, playing to what they know, using their smarts, and making a plan that works, right? Even though we might not believe in time travel, they make this work. They get Archer back. They solve the problem in a smart and scrappy way. And this is, after a season of them doing adventures together, this is the kind of stuff that they can come together and do. And I love that part. And you're right, the Gazelle speech is definitely Hallmark movie, right? But the stuff with Saval and Forrest and T'Pol and all of that, and seeing the other part of Enterprise, that this is the first mission. There's people back at home. It's not, Starfleet Command the way we know it. It's not support. There's friction there. And Saval coming around and saying what he says is such a huge moment in the series and in the character. I love it. I love that that's what they put all in this beginning of the season. So they're finishing what they started, and they're setting up what's to come. And I love every bit of it. This is
And what factor rating do you give it?
I give this one a 4. Is it absolutely perfect? No, but this is a really good one. And it, like I said, it finishes what needs to be finished, starts some new things, and drops crumbs along the way. And everybody has something to do. I can't give it a 5 because Silic never says John the way that I absolutely adore. He only says Archer, which is also good. But, I love this one. I love this one. it's a fun beginning.
Yeah, it's a really solid season opener. For me, it is not as good as part one, so this one only gets a warp 3 for me. The thing that feels a little bit missing is part one had a bunch of really interesting character stuff in terms of like the sort of regret slash despair that everybody feels about the destruction of the Paragon colony.
Oh, yeah.
And the questions that, you know, were sort of a light theme throughout the whole of season one around, should we even be out here? Do we know what we're doing? Part two sort of sets a lot of that aside for a very well-constructed, action-based episode. And I really like as you say, with the exception of Phlox, who probably has the least to do in the episode, it is a real, like, sort of ensemble piece between Tucker and Reed and Hoshi and Travis even sort of participating and with T'Pol in the like breakout and then the con job of Scylla. It feels dangerous in this episode.
And desperate.
Yeah, right. And I love that. Like, he feels dangerous in this episode, but also really cowardly. Right? Like, you know, this is the first time you sort of, across the several episodes you've seen him in Enterprise already, where it's obvious how much he's just the guy following instructions from the future. And now that he doesn't have those instructions, he's like completely falling apart, but falling apart in a way that feels, you know, really dangerous. So it's a great, I mean, as a season opener, right? Like, it gets your attention because it's very action packed. The Archer and Daniel stuff in the future, like, has a lot of, you know, fun and interesting teases. Romulan Star Empire, maybe you shouldn't be reading that, right? Like, and like, it's all sort of nicely done, but it is a bit thin compared to part one for me, because there is, like, part one had great action moments, but it also had a lot more than that. And Shockwave part two, to me, is just a lot of great action moments until you get to the end, when they sort of revisit the question of what should we do about Enterprise's mission moving forward. And, you know, Archer's speech is not the best. T'Pol's speech is really great because it is sort of that like continuation of the character's arc of her, you know, really leaning into seeing the potential of humanity and being a defender of it. And, you know, it sort of puts everything back in the box by the end of the episode, but that's exactly what you want, because you want him off. You don't want him heading back to Earth for the next 10 to 20 years. You want him off out in space, continuing off into the future. So yeah, it's a 3 for me. I was debating a 3-5. I was even debating a 4, but some of the sort of, I gave Shockwave part 1 a 4, and this one was just missing some of the meatier character stuff. And so I think that's why for me it comes down to 3, but I still really like it as an episode.
And you know what's interesting? Now that I have the ability to watch Shockwave 1 and 2 back to back, most of the time I do, right? And I feel like some of that flow you were talking about that goes away when you are watching it as a whole. It feels like you have a more balance, and which is exactly what a 2-part something should be, right? But it is interesting because I feel like when you have something that's a season ender and a season opener, there is usually a push to make it bigger, to make it more action-packed, to make it louder and heavier, to either end with a bang or start with a bang, right? Like, we both say that all the time about things. So it's just interesting when you think about it as 2 separate parts of a story versus one part, and if that changes how you feel about the flow and the balance in the episode. That happens with 2-parters all the time.
Carbon Creek. T'Pol tells Archer and Tucker a story about her great-grandmother and 2 other Vulcans who crash-landed in a small Pennsylvania town in the year 1957. So this is a let me tell you a story episode. It's Archer, Trip, and T'Pol in the captain's mess, and Archer's like, tell us a story, and T'Pol's like, what would you like to know? And Archer's like, well, I saw in your service record that you made a trip to Carbon Creek, Pennsylvania while you were working for the Vulcan Embassy. Like, why did you go to a town near Pittsburgh? And she's like, I'll tell you the story about it. And she tells the story of her great-grandmother, Tamia, also played by Jolene Blaylock, who is the second in command of a Vulcan survey vessel that was in orbit of Earth after the launch of Sputnik, sort of studying Earth, because it had just sort of launched its first orbital satellite. The ship runs into trouble and it crash lands in Pennsylvania coal country. After trying to survive on their own, the surviving 3 Vulcans, Tamia, Mestral, and I can't remember the third guy's name, decide they have to make contact with the humans, and they try and blend in. And Tamir is, well, so the other Vulcan is just like, I want to go home as quickly as possible, and stays that way all throughout the episode. Tamir warms up to the humans, but ultimately decides to go home. And then Mestral, played by John Paul Boehmer, who's really great in this episode, is just like, I love humans, and decides he's going to stay on Earth rather than go back to Vulcan. So they basically pretend that he died in the crash. And at the end of the episode, Trip and Archer are like, that's such an unlikely story. Is it true? And T'Pol's like, gee willikers, you got me. It's not true. But then she goes back to her quarters, and she has the purse that Tamir has throughout the episode, telling you this is actually true and it did all happen. Abby, what do you think about Carbon Creek?
Well, that fits right in with the fact that when you're doing Carbon Creek, it is kind of a G. Willikers kind of episode, right?
It sure is.
If Trek has ever done a Hallmark movie, this is kind of it. Right? Like, this is supposed to be warm and fuzzy, inspiring, all that kind of stuff. And, this makes a lot of people's favorite lists of Enterprise. Now, it's not one of my favorites, but I do really appreciate this episode. It is very sweet. It's a little too smarmy to be one of my favorites, but I love parts of this. First of all, I'm going to point out the costume work in this is amazing. The period piece stuff is all really good. It's really detailed. But the part that I love the most about the costumes in this episode are the uniforms that the Vulcans wear when they're on their ship and when they first crash. They have gorgeous uniforms. Like, they're tailored just right. They're very geometric, like Vulcans always are. They look like some sort of faux shiny leather. Like, when they went into town and took the clothes, right? I hope that they kept those uniforms somewhere, because they're just gorgeous. And I'm sure that fabric is long lasting and wonderfully scientific, but wow, did the costumes look great in this. And I liked the three Vulcans as kind of a trio, and the third Vulcan's name is Strawn, by the way.
Strawn, thank you.
Yep, no worries. This is the kind of minutia that lives rent-free in my head. Right? But I like the fact that the three of them represented three different parts on the spectrum of how they were thinking about humanity. You had Tamir, who is very much, no, interact as little as possible, talk as little as possible, be involved as little as possible. They're going to blow themselves up. I am not a fan. And then on the complete other end is Mestral, who's like, baseball is great. These people have potential. Don't you see the hope? I'm going to stay here. And then there's Strawn in the middle, who is much more neutral. Like, he definitely wants to go home, but he also doesn't think that there's no value in humanity. And he's been working as a plumber and a Mr. Fix-It, and he's constantly getting called to, fix this lady's sink. And so he's got more of the frustration of the situation as opposed to a polarization of humanity. But some of the best parts of this episode are the three of them back and forthing, talking about what to do, making plans, starting to slowly fit in, trying to decide if they're saving some miners from a disaster or not. It's a really nice balance to have that trio like that. Every time they're in their house, it is the same wallpaper and same layout of a kitchen as Benny Russell had in DS9. So check the wallpaper, go look at your screen caps on TrekCore. It's the same set. It's a really cool kind of little.
That's so funny. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And once you do, you'll never not see it, right?
I mean, because there's got to be like a 1950s apartment set, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's redressed a bit, but the wallpaper is a dead giveaway. And I think that's such a cool little factoid of the behind the scenes part of that makes this episode better. But this is a good, quiet episode. It's a good Prime Directive episode from a different lens. It's just nice. However, it doesn't have any Travis, any Malcolm, any Hoshi, any Phlox. So the majority of our main cast don't even show up in this episode. Right. And I miss that, because one of the things I like about Enterprise is Enterprise as a family. So I feel that's one of the reasons this one, I like it. I think it's very well done. Does it rise to the top for me? No, because we're missing more than half the people that I really love on this crew. But it is a good episode and a nice breath. After the big bombastic start, it was a good episode too. And fun to think that maybe we have First Contact all wrong. And the first man on the moon, I guess.
Yeah, right. So what factor did you give it?
I give this a 3.5. I think it's
3.5.
Yep, it's a good episode. It's not my very favorite, but it's definitely got a lot of Trek values in it, and there's a reason that a lot of people count this as a favorite.
This is why I love doing this show, because you surprised me. I was convinced this was going to be the first joint Warp 5.0, and I was going to have to think of, like, what's the, is it a Christopher Pike Medal of Valor? Is it the Warp Factor 5 Hall of Fame episodes that each get 5? But that's going to have to wait for a future episode. Yeah, this one, I totally understand what you're saying. This one's a 5 for me. This one is a Warp 5.0.
4.97.
They're matching our speed.
4.99. Warp 5.
And I get that too.
And it's funny. It's like, I'm surprised how much I love this episode, because normally I don't love episodes like this for the reason that you gave. So like an episode like Muse, which a lot of other people really love, I feel the same way that you feel about Carbon Creek, where I'm like, it's not on the ship. I don't love being on like prehistoric alien planets all episode mostly. There are a few of those episodes I like, but mostly it's one that like you're an automatic full point knocked off a 5 just by virtue of being an episode like that. But Carbon Creek really works for me. I mean, maybe because it's Earth, maybe because it's kind of a time travel episode, maybe because it's Jolene Blaylock, maybe because it's J. Paul Boehmer's Mistral, maybe it's because of the like just fun sort of leave it to beaverness of everything, right? Like they really kind of lean into the 1950s, sort of aesthetic and setting. Maybe it's because it's just a delightful low stakes episode of Star Trek, but it's a 5. I love that sort of philosophical debate between the 3 Vulcans about Earth. And it's funny because I actually read Tamir, Mistral, and Strawn a little bit differently. I think Strawn is the most, I don't want to be here. I don't really like humans very much. I'm doing this because I have to. And can I get out of here as quickly as possible? Tamir begins as being like, these people are going to blow themselves up. Let's get, I don't want to be here a day longer than I have to be. But then the Velcro thing, selling Velcro to fund the kids' college is very much a moment of like, actually, I have sort of come around somewhat on not enough to stay, but like I've come around somewhat on the value of humanity. And then obviously Mistral very quickly is like, these great people are great and I want to stay. But those scenes between them where they're sort of debating it is really, it's a great sort of outsider's look at humanity, and an outsider's look at like humanity that, was not all that far removed from when the episode was broadcast. So yeah, it's one, this is one that I have grown to love over time. I think if you'd asked me the first time I watched it, it probably would have fit right in the like, I don't really love episodes that are set largely off the ship. It's going to be a 3 for me, but today it's a 5. I love Carbon Creek.
See, and what's interesting too is I don't think there's anything at all wrong with everything that you said, right? Like all of those things are good and wonderful. But when I prep for my podcast, I watched each episode 4 times, right? Different lens. And when I was done with Carbon Creek, I was done with Carbon Creek for a while. And that tells me something about the episode. Like I didn't need to go back and watch this one again. Whereas some of them I finish prepping and I talk about it and I still want to watch it again. And that's a big thing for me when I get to some really high ratings is I have to want to watch it again.
Minefield. Enterprise strays into a Romulan minefield and is disabled by a cloaked mine. While deactivating another mine, Reed gets pinned to the ship's hull. So episode begins. Enterprise has found a Class M planet. Minshara class planet. This is so cool. Let's go down. Boom. Romulan mine explodes on the ship. Blows out a section of the hull. Ship's really banged up. They realize they're in a minefield. Oh, wait, not just we're in a minefield. There's one stuck on the hull that might go off. Reed's like, I know that's my job. Heads out there to fix it. Romulan ship appears and starts being like, get the hell out of here. The mine on the hull that Reed's trying to deactivate. A little spike comes out and goes through his leg. So Archer has to go out. I'm sorry, I missed a really key plot development, which is we start with the most awkward breakfast scene of all time between Archer and Reed, in which the silent enemy Reed has returned, and I have a whole theory about Reed coming out of this episode.
Hey, and Archer uses the salt and pepper shakers that are just so
Those
useless because
ridiculous salt and
there
pepper
can't
shakers.
be any salt and pepper in those shakers. There's not enough room.
So Archer goes out to the hull and, Reed is sort of talking him through disarming the mine, and Reed's all ready to kill himself, and Archer's like, I'm not going to let you do that. And Reed basically says, I don't think you're a particularly good captain. And Archer's like, whatever. And the Romulans are like, get the hell out of here. And eventually they can't disarm the mine, so they basically release the section of the hull that the mine is on, and Archer and Reed both use shuttle pod doors to protect themselves from the blast, get pulled up into the launch bay, and then Enterprise leaves after the Romulans have given them a really long amount of time for all of this to happen to get away in the nick of time. Abby, what do you think about Minefield?
I've never heard a recap of this episode quite like that, and I loved it. I was snickering the whole time. Yes, this episode, first of all, this is an underrated episode, right? Like, it sounds so silly when you put the plot out like that, but there's a lot of really interesting character work in this and some really good moments. Like, first of all, can we just point out that Hoshi is brilliant? Because here she is translating, like, on the fly again, and huge messages, doing all this. I'm screwed so many times without Hoshi. So I got to give her a little call out in this one. And, I have come to a new appreciation of Malcolm Reed, having done my podcast. We're about halfway through season 4 at this point. This man is really good at his job. Right? Like, Malcolm Reed is good at his job. He is good at his job. He is good at his job. No matter what you think about him as a person, he is good at his job, right? And he's the right person to have this job. I mean, think about the fact that he has a spike on a mine through his leg in an EV suit out in a really tense time impacted situation. And he's on drugs because he has a spike through his leg, and he still manages to talk his captain through disarming an alien mine that just kind of looks like something that he's done before, right? This man is good at his job, right?
The next one's going to be tricky clockwise.
He really, really is. And I think Malcolm, I've come to see, is definitely one of those people you see bits of him here and there. He opens up a little bit here and there, but he is kind of one of those people who we know who's really, really obsessed with one thing, like us maybe. And we can talk and be really comfortable when we're doing that, but sometimes we're not more comfortable in the big world. And he can be really stiff and awkward. And it's one of those things where it almost does feel regressive. But at the same time, and we've all lived through times where we're like, oh, this is totally going to be fine. Oh, and I feel anxious. I feel weird. Why is it? Why am I going back to this? Or you go back to your family. And if that's the pattern you had growing up, that's what you have now. And I feel like he is in this super tense, super crazy situation, and he's falling back on what was bred into him, what he lived through, what he grew up in. We hear so much back of that about his family history.
You're afraid of the water?
But he's also at the point where he's almost like, well, you know what? I don't think I'm getting out of this. Let me be a little bit honest at times, which is also a reaction to all this. And the relationship between Archer and Malcolm doesn't get a lot of time. And often they are very snippy at each other about stuff. But they also have moments of connection. And a lot of that starts here. So there are moments that are really embarrassing. There are moments that are really awkward. There are moments that I just cringe when Archer keeps trying to talk to him about sports. And he's like, yeah, I don't know. And I didn't start watching sports.
My captain.
Just there are moments in there, but they're very real. And I really like that they decided to do a deep character dive. And they did it in EV suits. So, like, this is really limited how they can act with their bodies. It's very facially focused because that's what you see through the helmets is just their face. And I love these EV suits, by the way. They're gorgeous. I know they were so heavy and such a pain on the actors, but how fun to have this deep little character dive here. And I like that. Here we go again. There's some Romulans poking up. This is interesting. So I like this one. I think it is truly underrated. And I give it a 3.5 as a warp factor.
3.5. We are on the same page about Minefield. This is also a 3.5 for me. Here's an alternative theory about Malcolm Reed.
All right, I'm ready.
So, to me, there are two very distinct Malcolm Reed characters. If you watch Silent Enemy and Minefield, that's one Malcolm Reed. if you watch Shuttlepod 1 and 2 Days and 2 Nights, that's a completely different Malcolm Reed. My theory about Malcolm Reed, he gets beamed in an early episode. My theory about Malcolm Reed is that they accidentally created a transporter duplicate of Malcolm Reed that has two different halves of his personality, and Starfleet is so embarrassed about the fact that it's like debuting this transporter technology and it's screwed up so quickly that they're keeping it quiet by basically keeping both Malcolm Reeds on the ship as Malcolm Reed. And so you see one of those Malcolm Reeds in Silent Enemy and Minefield, and the other Malcolm Reed in Shuttlepod 1 and 2 Days and 2 Nights. Trip is friends with the Shuttlepod 1 Malcolm Reed. He's not friends with the Silent Enemy Malcolm Reed. Shuttlepod 1 Malcolm Reed's a bit of a womanizer. Silent Enemy Malcolm Reed's never touched a woman in his life. Like they're so different people and they're such different characterizations. It just, like, this has been a long-running thing for this show already. This is episode 7, and, like, the Malcolm Reed question is one that I have talked about on, like, 3 different episodes because I just find their inability to, like, lock into one characterization of Malcolm to be really interesting.
All right. So which Malcolm was it back in Voxola when he was doing the shield? And the
that
force
could have been
field?
either, because they're both very, because every other episode he's in, it's just sort of like he is just a contributor to the plot rather than sort of getting like a character moment. You know, actually, as I'm thinking about it, Vox Solar Malcolm is probably Silent Enemy Malcolm and Minefield Malcolm, because that guy's a bit of a dick, and Vox Solar Malcolm was the one who wanted to torture the alien being, and Flock was like, don't you dare.
Yeah.
So that's probably Silent Enemy Malcolm.
Interesting.
If you push me. Yeah.
I wonder if this is going to continue into the future, because I want to ask you about like 6 more episodes that have Malcolm Focus that are coming up going, all right, so which one is this one? Or does one of them die in the Expanse, right? And they have a backup.
Quite
So,
possibly.
that's
Yeah,
a big deal.
exactly.
Oh, I am going to be interested in following this thread as you finish Enterprise.
So overall, I like Minefield a lot. I mean, it's, it's a great action episode. The Romulan stuff is great. There's a lot of tension behind it. The thing that holds it back from being a 4 or 4.5, in addition to my like long-running struggles with the characterization of Malcolm Reed, is there is a large amount of convenience in the episode that I kind of hinted at in the synopsis. Like, the Romulans give them a really long time to leave, like a distressingly long amount of time to leave, given the way that it's presented to you. Like, this is not something that happens over the course of minutes. It's something that clearly happens over the course of hours.
Yeah.
Like, Trip says it's going to take them 3 to 4 hours minimum to be ready to like
take the plate off.
Take the plate off and have it float away. And so it's taking place over the course of hours, and every time the Romulans show up, it's like, this is your final warning to get out of here. But then it's clearly like another hour or 2 before they come back again and say, we really mean it this time.
We're not going to tolerate your espionage in half an hour.
Exactly. So there is just a little bit of like the sort of ticking clock element of it doesn't quite work for me, because they weren't quite able to figure out how to fit in all the character stuff they wanted to do while also having have the ticking clock make sense. Having said that, though, I wouldn't trade the character stuff away for a better ticking clock, because again, as much as I am baffled by the characterization of Malcolm Reed across, season 1 and now into season 2, and maybe I just take it personally as the British person that like the British person is sort of so weirdly characterized, but like the character stuff for this version of Malcolm Reed with Jonathan Archer is really interesting, and like that, Reed sort of overly being a hero, and in some ways it is it's not explicitly said out loud, but you are seeing a little bit of like an American perspective on how to live life and a British perspective on how to live life, and the two sort of clashing up against each other, which, hey, as a British person who lives in America and is both now a US citizen and a UK citizen, like, I am the personification of that clash of personas and cultures. So I really like that, because that's sort of what I'm seeing. It's not a difference between Archer and Reed. It's a difference between Brits and Americans, even though it's not explicitly kind of framed as that. And, I find that really interesting in those different sort of styles of being and ways of approaching the world. So, yeah, I mean, it's a really slick episode. Also got a really slick David Bell soundtrack. He uses some of the same music from Fallen Hero.
Which is another great episode, by the way.
It
Also
sure is.
underrated.
That was my first 5.0.
That was my first 10.0 on my podcast when we're doing it. Like, that's a good episode.
Yeah, we're on an island on that, Abby, as I have come to discover.
That's all right. It's good company.
But yeah, this is the 3.5 for me.
Well, I really like your thought of the American perspective versus the British perspective. And I'm going to really think on that and like view stuff differently from that because I hadn't ever thought about that before. And you're right. You're the perfect person to notice that and call that out. And that's going to be something for me to chew on for a long time. So I like that. And I am now forever going to be thinking, which read is it when I'm watching an Enterprise episode?
Which read is it?
Which read is it? Transporter clone. Boo.
Dead Stop. Enterprise docks with a strange automated repair station, which proves too good to be true. So Enterprise has taken on a lot of damage in Minefield. It's going to take them a decade to get back to Jupiter Station. They put out a distress call, and a Tellarite freighter's like, burr, 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 repair station, burr, 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 burr. So they go to the repair station, and they get there, and it's uninhabited, and they're like, well, that's too small for us. And then it scans them and starts to reconfigure, and the like docking bay gets big enough for Enterprise's saucer, and so Enterprise docks with the repair station, and they walk into the repair station, and director Roxanne Dawson is the computer voice, and they're like, we'll repair your ship for you, and we request payment, and the whole time Archer's like, I know, feels like there's got to be a catch here, because they're only asking for 200 liters of warp plasma, but hey, we're here, we might as well do it. So they commit to it, and the station gets to work, and, with its automated robot arm, starts fixing up the ship, and they fix everything. They fix the paint scratch from the inspection pod in Broken Bow that bumped against it. They fix the squeak in Archer's floor that's been referenced in a previous episode. They fix Reed's leg from Minefield, in addition to sort of fixing up the exterior of the ship. And, it's a full upgrade job on Enterprise back to pristine factory reset condition. As it's going through, Mayweather gets a call to come down to the landing bay, which is one of the areas you're not supposed to go in because it's in the middle of reconstruction. And he's dead. Everybody's very sad that Travis is dead until Phlox realizes that this is not a dead Travis. This is a sort of fake body of Travis Mayweather.
Fake dead Travis is what we call him.
Fake dead Travis, yeah. And then it's like, well, where the hell is Travis? So then they're like, maybe it's the repair station because Reed and Trip. And this is Shuttlepod 1, Reed, because he's friends with Trip. They've been being a little
other Trip is back in sickbay getting his leg fixed up, right?
Exactly, yes. Silent Enemy Reed's getting his leg fixed up. Shuttlepod 1 Reed is with Trip, like,
having
breaking the rules, which Silent Enemy Reed would never break the rules like that. So, yeah, so they're getting in some hijinks, and then they realize that, maybe there's more to this station than we think. They break into the station's control center and find that the actual payment is people, that ships that come and get repaired, one of their crew members gets taken and like plugged into the computer, and that's how the like repair station functions. So, and Travis is there, so they bust Travis out, they blow up the repair station, and Enterprise continues on its way, fully repaired. Abby, what do you think about Dead Stop?
All right. Well, you forgot the last part, which is Enterprise continues on its way. The station starts rebuilding itself.
Yes.
That's what ends this episode with the gut punch, right? Like, it's not really dead.
Should have been a season 5 episode.
That would have been so cool. Or Strange New Worlds needs to go back after their ship gets beat up, right? Mm-hmm. It could still be out there somewhere. I would love to see that. But, this also feels like one of those things that, okay, so you go to this repair station and you're obviously going to tell people, hey, I got fixed up. You think you had an accident. It's a bummer. You're not necessarily going to tell everybody. Like, I'm sure that the Tellarites who'd been there had lost a crew member, but they didn't tell Archer that when they called out for help, right? But then you think, okay, so if some species or some organization goes to this repair station and every single time there's an accident, it feels like the jig's going to be up on this station pretty soon. They're going to stop coming. Like, after it happens twice, you're going to be like, this is a little wonky, but either way, so creepy at the end that the station is repairing itself
So
and just
creepy.
and the music, and that's where they leave you. It's one of those that you kind of get like the heebie-jeebies when you're done. You're like, oh wow, okay. So I love that part of it, and I love this episode. I think this episode is fun. I feel bad for poor dead Travis and real Travis, who for like the second time in what 7 or 8 episodes ends up on a bio bed, and Archer coming in and going, "How are you doing?" And he goes, "Oh, much better, sir." I mean, it happened in 2 days and 2 nights. It happens here. Travis is the Miles O'Brien of Enterprise, right? This poor guy, he suffers. He had the allergic reaction. I mean, it's just, yeah. But I love this episode. It's so moody, right? Like if Trek Ranks ever does the episodes with like a vibe or a mood, this one fits in there because Archer is talking about, his gut instinct is something isn't right here. Like this station is too good to be true. Gut instinct. He talks to people about it and he's right, And this keeps the mood because every once in a while you see the Enterprise crew from the station's perspective. Like when he's in there raging about Travis and it keeps going, your inquiry is not recognized and any damage to this station will be added to your total cost. And you see through a monitor him freaking out and pounding on the monitor. It just makes it that much more creepy and clinical, which is wonderful.
Remember,
But at the same time, you also have Phlox being brilliant in this episode, right? Like he just casually is all the time. This is one smart guy. Thank goodness. Again, Hoshi's has saved their butt a bazillion times. So has Phlox. Best choice that Archer ever made was putting him on as the officer in his medbay. Wish he had some more staff. But you see Phlox in different levels here. Brilliant figuring out about the virus, but also being the actual clinician when he's doing the autopsy and then talking to Hoshi and like having this heart-to-heart moment. And I love the Hoshi Phlox moments. They are really strong through this whole series. They have been since the beginning. And I like that scene where they're talking about Travis playing the joke with the Jello and all that. It's really a moment of heart in this action-y episode. And one of my favorite scenes, because it has inspired one of my favorite jokes, is when they're first into the station, Archer and T'Pol and Trip, and they go into the recreation room and they find the table that has the replicator on it, and they're just, the guys are just blown away. Like, T'Pol orders cold water, and Archer's like looking under the table, trying to figure out how this works, and all that. And then later on, the whole crew is in there, and Enterprise is full of food and scenes around a table, right? Like, all of these episodes we've talked about so far have had scenes around a table, most of them food tables, right? Here we go again. They're sitting there and eating. And when Travis and Malcolm are eating and Malcolm is shoving this in and Trip is holding this pad over his plate, he is eating perfectly round spherical carrots. Carrot balls. He's eating carrot balls. And I'm the one who like freeze frames the Enterprise food and loves Dorothy Duder who did it for them. But the carrot balls are so funny because he's got this big steak and potato and all these green vegetables and then these spheres of carrots. And Enterprise has so many round things in it, but carrot balls, like I was just laughing so hard. I'm like, wow, carrot balls, which has inspired so many jokes in my life. And when this comes out, I will post this picture on Blue Sky when you post your episode because the carrot balls will never cease to be funny for me. So this is a great episode. It's got every little bit of everybody again. I give this one a 4. This is a fun one.
Yeah, this is a 4 for me too. It is part 3 in I don't know if it's the last part, but there have been 3 episodes like this in Enterprise, 2 episodes like this already in Enterprise, and this is the 3rd. And I really like this genre of Enterprise episodes, which is space is really dangerous and there are threats out there you don't fully understand. Fight or flight, silent enemy, dead stop. All play with that same idea of there being aliens or enemies who don't really announce themselves, don't really tell you what their agenda is. And you kind of just have to get past them, right? Like, You're not going to know. You don't get your, like, TNG style explanation at the end of the episode that makes everything make sense. You know, like a TNG episode that feels kind of similar is Schisms.
Oh, yeah.
And you watch Schisms, you get an explanation of who they are, right? Like, because the TNG crew are the 24th century, they can figure this stuff out. But here in the 22nd century, we can't figure this stuff out yet. So we just kind of have to deal with these threats and move on. The station is creepy. Roxanne Dawson's robotic voice is creepy. The effects are really cool. You know, the repairing the ship, that sort of sense all throughout the episode that you kind of share with Archer, which is like, this is too good to be true.
Waiting for the shoe to drop.
Right. And then there is a catch and, you know, you've got the like And then there's the sort of public parts of the station are all like clinical and white, but then they go into the, horror factory where they've got people, all kinds of aliens hooked up to this computer, and it's all grimy and grungy and, sort of really showing you that the bit that people see is just the sort of public face. It's a very good episode. It's very sort of affecting in that way and very effective in just leaving you unsettled. And then, that final shot where it's like, you thought you fixed this by blowing it up, but actually this thing is, starting to rebuild itself because this is not the first time this has happened and it won't be the last, is
surprise,
an effectively creepy way to end the episode.
Yeah, this is such a fun one when you want those chills. This could definitely almost be a Halloween type episode. It's not gory, but it's unsettling.
A night in sickbay. Archer spends a night in sickbay after Porthos falls ill with a deadly virus following a visit to an alien planet. So we open the episode with Archer and Paul and Hoshi back up on the ship. They've been at the Cretacean homeworld, and guess what? They've offended them again, and they're not really sure why. And they go into the decon chamber, and Phlox is like, everyone can leave except for Porthos because something's wrong with him. And Archer's immediately on guard about it. And turns out that Porthos is very sick because he's picked up some sort of pathogen down on the surface because they didn't check his genetic profile and think to tell them not to bring Porthos. And Archer's really sort of consumed by the situation that Porthos is in and his declining health. Meanwhile, the Cretaceans are like, you've really offended us. And it turns out the thing that they did was Porthos peed on one of their like sacred trees. And Archer's like, I don't care because my dog is dying, but they really need this warp injector. And Archer's spending a lot of time in sickbay, and he tries to stay there overnight, but it's kind of a madhouse with all the animals and Phlox being a weirdo. So he's like in and out of sickbay all night. There's this whole putrid subplot about like, do you actually have sexual romantic feelings for T'Pol? That like just makes this episode, like, to the extent everybody says this is a terrible episode, that's the reason why. And then they kill a chameleon to save Porthos. And Archer understands the value of saying sorry when you're being a prideful asshole, which you can completely understand why he was like so concerned about Porthos, but also he was being kind of a prideful asshole. So in the end, he dons his beads, grabs his chainsaw, and ritualistically hacks up a tree, maybe the same tree that Porthos peed on, for the benefits of the Cretacean people. They get their 5th warp injector and 2 more spares out of the goodness of the Cretacean's heart, and we continue on our way. Abby, what do you think about A Night in Sickbay?
First of all, I think that your recaps might be the best part of this entire show because they're so funny. Yeah, okay, so first of all, there hasn't been that much time since they left the repair station, right? Did they just not fix these injectors like back to factory specs? Because why is it busted or worn out again already? Like, I think that when I watch these as a block, right? Because and for all we know, there were months in between that we didn't see, but it doesn't play like that. It doesn't feel like that. Like, anyways, whatever. Okay, so this episode is silly. This episode is cringy, but this episode does have some really great moments. It also has one of my least favorite scores of all of Star Trek music. And I know you and I are both Star Trek music fans, but the score in this one, we have dubbed it the creepy sexy time music because it goes, it's bad. It's so bad. And it makes scenes that could almost have been less cringy if it didn't have that music behind it to make you go, hey, do you know what we're talking about here? Hey, you see this, right? Gross. But we get a heap ton of Porthos, even if it is fake Porthos floating in goo for a chunk of it. We get Porthos with that tiny little Band-Aid on his head, and that just fills my heart right there. And we have Archer, who definitely, nobody else would be like Archer is, right? One, because he's the first one, and he doesn't have all the technology that our other captains do, and they know better. But Archer, I appreciate the fact that when he's letting go, he's obviously frustrated, right? He's frustrated, he's worried, And the way he's showing that is being sarcastic and angry, right? But he's showing that to T'Pol and Hoshi, two people that he knows and that he has a trusting, somewhat deeper relationship with than the other people. I mean, he's known Hoshi forever. He and T'Pol have been through some stuff. They trust each other much more now. The only other person I could see him really being this sarcastic and nasty with would be Trip. And later on, we do see them talking about things over, and he gets a little punchy and Trip pushes back a little bit. Like, he's being a real human in this episode, in that plot part, right? Worried, he's sleep deprived, he's frustrated, and he's venting and he's being sarcastic. And that's when I get to all those things, I also get snarky and sarcastic. So, like, I don't mind that part of it. The whole subplot with T'Pol, let's just not. It's a no-go, it's bad. It hurts my heart to watch those parts up against the other good stuff in here, because we also get a really fun look at Phlox and his menagerie, which is such a unique thing to Enterprise. I mean, chasing the bat around is silly. Bravo Hoshi again for coming in and just solving the problem like Hoshi does so often. But I like the fact that it's real. Like, he really does have creatures that need to be fed and need to be taken care of. I would not like to see him clipping his toenails and feeding them to his menagerie ever again. Thank you very much. That's a little much.
Or like scraping his tongue.
His tongue, yeah. I mean, but at the same time, Phlox is an alien on a ship full of humans with a zoo, pretty much, right? Like, this is the realness of what it would be like to have all of that. And then we get those scenes where he and Archer are talking about Denobulan culture and Denobulan families. And while it's tucked into the part of this episode that I don't like, I do like that. I like Phlox talking about his family and his children. I like him talking about how he's polygamous and all these different relationships and like how close quarters are in Denobula. I like those peeks into that. I hope we get more Denobulans fleshed out in other series at some point, because it is a really interesting. So this episode is a lot in a lot of ways, but it is not always bad. It just has one really bad, part of the plot. So this one ends up for me at a warp factor 2.5, because that plot brings down so much of the rest, but there are good moments in this episode.
Yeah, this one's a 1.5 for me, because just like Fusion, where there's a ton of great episode around one really unfortunate story choice, that got a 1.5 from me too, because I'm like, the fact that the rest of the episode is so good does not forgive the fact for me that they started with, what if T'Pol gets assaulted, and then built an episode around it. A Night in Sickbay has the same problem for me, which is that they built actually a pretty decent episode around the concept of let's explore the sexual tension between Archer and T'Pol. And like, everything else is fruit from the poison tree of that. It's just so obvious that that's the episode, right? That like, on the board they had Porthos get sick, let's do some romantic stuff with Archer and T'Pol. Like, it's not 4th on the list, it's not 5th on the list, it's 1 or 2 on the list. And I just can't forgive the episode for that choice, even though if you deconstruct the episode, probably a solid 25 to 30 minutes of it, I actually really enjoy or really appreciate. I mean, all of the stuff about Archer and Porthos is great. Like, any pet owner knows exactly how Archer's feeling, knows exactly how much the like rest of the world doesn't matter in that moment when your pet is sick. As somebody who doesn't have kids, for me, watching this episode, I'm like, oh, I this is how people with kids feel when they watch episodes where kids get sick and are in danger, right? Like,
exactly.
Because I don't have that same level of emotional connection or resonance with that, because it's not like a lived experience I have, but I have a cat, and, so watching this episode, I feel, I mean, this is such an awful millennial childless person thing to say, but like, I feel that sense of connection as a pet owner to the emotions that Archer's going through in this moment, and like, that fully resonates with me. That stuff is great, and he is being prideful about it, because Porthos did pee on one of their sacred trees. Like, that is okay, fair enough, you probably did screw up because you didn't think enough about, like, T'Pol is rightfully hard on him about, like, this is an alien culture. You need to be mindful of how that alien culture feels about things. And yes, what happened next is really bad, but that doesn't excuse the original mistake, which he learns by the end of the episode. And like, that's done really effectively, I think. So like, there is a lot of great, and the Phlox Menagerie stuff is really fun. I think it maybe leans ever so slightly into the comically absurd because it's the toenails and it's the tongue. And it's the, the bat getting out. Maybe if it had just been 2 out of 3 rather than 3 out of 3, like it would have worked slightly better for me. But I still really enjoy a lot of that. And I enjoy this sort of like, again, it's clash of cultures, right? Like Archer, who just wants to get a good night's sleep, and Phlox, who doesn't sleep outside of his hibernation cycle. And so, of course, he's awake all night and clattering around and, everything that sort of happens with that. So A Night in Sickbay is an episode that has a lot to like in it, and I would like to be one of those people who is like, I would like to set aside the things I really don't like about this episode and focus on the things I really do and give it a higher rating. But I can't forgive episodes that just feel very much to me like the thing I hate about the episode was their starting point and all of the good stuff, kind of like sort of filled in around it. And so that's why it's a 1.5 for me.
Well, and that is 100% valid, and I get that too. I always try to find the positives, and the more I watched this one, the more fun little things that I found. So it raised it for me. Just the fact that we get to see so much of the sickbay set, like you were talking, it's kind of absurd, but it's also kind of amazing because he's got this giant tub, he's got these shelves, he's got these vents. There's a roll of paper towels on the wall, like a real medical place would have. That alone is half a warp factor for me because that set is so gorgeously done.
The trial never ended, Captain. We never reached a verdict. But now we have. You're guilty.
All right, looking across the 5 episodes, here's our average scores and ranking from worst to best. So worst episode of this 5-episode block is A Night in Sickbay. You gave it a 2.5. I gave it a 1.5. It averaged a 2. We then have a tie between 4th and 3rd place episodes with Shockwave Part 2 and Minefield, which each averaged a 3.5. Then Dead Stop, which got a 4. And our top episode of the pack, pulled up by my 5.0, is Carbon Creek, which averaged a 4.25. That means for this block of episodes, I gave an average of 3.4. You gave an average of 3.5, which means our average is 3.45. That is slightly stronger than the last block of episodes, the last 5 episodes of season 1, but not quite. It's now number 2 on the list for highest rated block of episodes, but does not yet overcome the average 4.05 that we gave Silent Enemy, Dear Doctor, Sleeping Dogs, Shadows of Pajem, and Shuttlepod 1. That remains in the top spot for Enterprise.
That's going to stay there for a bit, is my guess.
Yeah, I think you are probably right about that as I scroll down my spreadsheet and look at the episodes still to come for season 2.
Well, here's my thought on season 2 as a whole, just as someone who's really lived in it for a long time. There are some really good underrated episodes in season 2 that people forget because they're surrounded by some really not spectacular episodes. But there are a lot of gems overall than what I thought, even having watched it dozens of times before I went into like analysis. So I'm excited to see if your results with all of you and your guests come out to the same thing.
My very strong feeling about Enterprise season 2, which everybody is like, oh, well, clearly that's one of the worst seasons of Star Trek, is that they don't actually think the whole season is the worst season of Star Trek. They are thinking about a 10-episode run starting right here with A Night in Sickbay and ending with Stigma, which actually I think is pretty good.
I love Stigma.
And that every negative perception that people have about Enterprise is tied to this specific 10-episode stretch. And that outside of that, like the first 4 episodes of the season, really, really strong. Once you hit Ceasefire, you've then got 11 episodes where there's only a couple of like mid episodes in there. The rest of them are good. It's just you get this hit of 10 episodes that are like so A Night in Sickbay, Marauders, The Seventh, The Communicator, Singularity, Vanishing Point, Precious Cargo, The Catwalk, Dawn. I mean, the best episodes of the lot are Marauders.
Marauders
and
is
the
underrated.
Catwalk,
Yes,
right?
agreed.
Like,
But Dawn has some cool moments in it.
I hate Dawn personally. That's
Oh, come on. There's an
that's gonna
enemy
rate
who
low for
spits
me.
different stuff out like a soda fountain. That's kind
Nope.
of cool.
Hate it. Will that be my first 1.0? I don't know. Tune in a couple of episodes and find out. But like, if Marauders and the Catwalk and maybe Stigma are the episodes you're holding up and saying are the best episode of that 10 episode run, what are they gonna like? What are we gonna give? Like a 3.5, right? Maybe a 4 for the Catwalk. So please, everybody, keep listening to the next 2 episodes because we're going to have a great discussion about these blocks. But I just think all of the criticisms of Enterprise Season 2 are distilled down to this run of episodes beginning with A Night in Sickbay.
It's a fair take. And like I said, anyone who wants to hear me talk a lot about season 2, it's all out there. But I will hold Stigma up as a massively maligned episode. It's because people didn't like fusion.
Yes.
And because they're thinking about it in the way that Brandon and Braga went out and broadcasted it to the world. There's so much there. Stick around and listen to Alex's next couple episodes, if for no other reason than Stigma is worth your time.
Performance reviews will be held tomorrow starting at 0800 hours in the wardroom. Check your team leaders for the schedule. Dismissed.
All right, next we will discuss some of the things we enjoyed most across this block of episodes. Collectively, we will each pick a best series regular performance, best guest performance, best production design, best quiet moment, and best loud moment. So, Abby, would love to hear what you think was the best series regular performance in this block of episodes.
All right. So, this is interesting because I was thinking about the series regulars and how there was an episode where we didn't even have half of them, right? So
yeah, right.
That was something. And then I was trying to decide, do I want to call out one episode where I thought the performance was absolutely amazing, or do I want to pick someone who was amazing over like the whole chunk of blocks? But again, there's an episode where there isn't anyone there. And I was really thinking about picking Phlox because I really love the look we get into the Nobulan Society. And I love Phlox when he's all wonky and floxy. But I think I am going back to Dominic Keating, and I am going back to Malcolm Reed, and I'm going back to Minefield, because no matter which transporter clone of Malcolm this is, I think this is some of his best acting moments. This is a lot more emotion than we normally get from him. This is competent, yet paired with all of this heroicism that he had going on. And the fact that when you think about it, the majority of this episode, he's drugged up and still doing what he needs to do. And I have heard Dominic Keating talk about this episode and how hard it was because they were in those spacesuits the whole time. And those things are so heavy and you have to move extra slow. And like you pull your back out after a while because you're sitting, and he's at this weird floaty angle, right? This whole time. And to get the level of performance and the nuances that I found there. And like I said, I've come to a new appreciation of Malcolm Reed in all of my rewatching. I think that this is a moment when you think about this character, this is an episode that pops up to the top. And I can't say that about any of the other ones. So it had to be Malcolm.
Yeah, I completely think you have a really... I mean, as much as I have, like... sort of express frustration with the characterization of Malcolm Reed, Dominic Keating does a great job in this episode. And with all the different characterizations of Malcolm Reed, I think this characterization of Malcolm Reed is the one that feels most comfortable to me. The like sort of ultra stuffy, like very buttoned up, needs to kind of let loose a little bit guy. And I think Dominic Keating plays that version of the character exceptionally well. And so all of those sort of tension points with Archer, I mean, just the opening, it is so deliciously awkward, and it's so well played because clearly Scott Bakula and Dominic Keating probably got along pretty well, right? We know the Enterprise cast got along pretty well, that there wasn't like weirdness or awkwardness amongst the cast like there were with some of the other casts. And so the fact that they play so well just this completely chalk and cheese character, Britishism right there, who like are very different from each other, having this conversation, and Archer just like, trying to serve these tennis balls across the net and getting nothing back.
They're falling like lead balloons.
Oh my God, it's so great. Yeah, so totally. I totally appreciate picking Dominic Keating in Minefield.
Yeah, he's just a fun character in this block that you see less and less of as the series goes on. So he needed to call out here because it might not come again.
Yeah, very fair. My runner-up pick, which I have to give a shout out to, is Breezy. If you're wondering who Breezy is one of 3 dogs who played Porthos and is the dog who played Porthos in A Night in Sickbay. I looked it up to make sure. Breezy is great. Breezy's the main Porthos from mid-season 1, I think, until season 4. I think Breezy had a sister that she trades off with as Porthos, but I think Breezy's in more episodes than the sister because they had slightly different temperaments, and so, you know,
Well, neither one of them was real pleasant to them unless they were covered in tuna fish juice. There's another behind the scenes for you. Every time you see Porthos jump up onto anybody, there was tuna fish juice there.
Nice. So Breezy gets my runner-up, but my actual pick is Jolene Blaylock as Tamia in Carbon Creek, which is a really nice performance. Feels, you know, I mean, she's playing a Vulcan with the same with a very similar haircut to T'Pol.
Different color.
Yeah, different color, but like the same makeup, and, you know, and yet Tamia does not feel just like T'Pol. She does feel like her own character, and that's a very hard thing for an actress to pull off. And Jolene had the hardest job of the episode, not least because she's in the whole thing pretty much, but as we were talking about before, Mestral and Strawn are fixed points in this episode. They're pretty much the same at the beginning of the episode as they are at the end of the episode. The one who really goes on an arc is Tamia, because she goes from Strawn's position to not quite Mestral's position, but she gets a lot closer to it by the end of the episode. And so, you know, sort of experiencing her opening up to human culture, not as aggressively, not as full-throatedly as Mestral does, but like dipping her toe in the water. And then that wonderful scene of her going into Pittsburgh and, you know, selling the patent for Velcro to, you know, the like fat cat businessman, and that being enough to like get the kid's college tuition across the line so that he can go to college is such a sweet and tender moment, and is sort of like proves to you how far the character has come since landing on Earth. So yeah. It's Jolene Blaylock for me.
You know, you can never go wrong with picking her, because if there was ever somebody in Star Trek who has face acting down, it's her. Like, she moves muscles tiny ways in her face that I don't think I could do if you paid me. And you see all the different emotions. And she does a very good Vulcan. And yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people think of Carbon Creek as a T'Pol episode, but really it's a Tamir episode. So
Totally.
It's a Jolene episode, which is not a bad thing. And she is so underrated overall in the franchise as well, especially since she is pulled back from it so much recently. But yeah, that's an excellent choice. I can stand behind that 100%.
Best guest performance.
Well, this was interesting because there weren't that many.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah.
So like these were a lot of shows that were very much bottled up, with the exception of, you know, Carbon Creek and Shockwave. There's not a ton of them. So
Dead Stop basically has no guests in it.
Unless you count the voice.
Unless you count the voice. Minefield has no guests in it unless you count the voice.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
A Night in Sickbay has a few. I mean,
a couple.
Don't knock Vaughn Armstrong, in all his many roles, but
he's also not really in the episode. I mean, he gets a couple of quick scenes.
He gets a couple of good looks in there, both approving and disapproving. But
right.
Yeah, it was an interesting one, because I was sitting here thinking, okay, you can always go back to Silic and John Fleck's performance. That is always wonderful, and he's my backup pick here, my secondary systems, because he eats all the scenery, and we get a flavor of Silic in this that we hadn't before. But I mean, if you're looking at these 5 episodes, the one that 100% jumps out is J. Paul Wilmer as Mistral. I'm sorry, but it has to be. He's amazing. He is also the heart of that episode. And he's been in so many other little bits of Star Trek, right? You know, he was in The Killing Game, he was in Stormfront, he plays Nazis a lot. He was the drone in 1, but this is what I would consider his best Star Trek performance. Very nuanced. He's got the heart and the comedy. And then when he goes in and he kisses Maggie, or Maggie kisses him, I suppose. And then he calls it very pleasant. And she goes, I was hoping for something more than pleasant. And he goes, well, I did say very pleasant. It's just, but the way he says it, and the warmth in his eyes, but while keeping the completely deadpan Vulcan face. Like, it's just a perfect moment there. And I enjoy every minute he's on screen. And so I had to pick him for this. That's stood out from the crowd.
Well, it's different.
It's got to be J. Paul Boehmer as Mistral. It's got to be. That's my pick too. I've said
Yes, it
before
is.
in previous episodes, like, normally my inclination is to, if you pick something, for me to then pick something else.
Something
so we
else,
get more
yep.
to talk about, unless there's just such an obvious top pick. So
Yep.
I think the last one I did this for was Jen and I both picked John Billingsley as best series regular for Dear Doctor, because
100%.
in that 5-episode run, he's just unquestionably the best of the lot. And
Yep.
here, again, J. Paul Boehmer, unquestionably the best of the lot. I thought
Yep.
very, like, John Fleck as Silic, particularly his sort of uncertainty and, like, cowardliness, you know, like, really comes to the fore in Shockwave Part 2. I thought that was really interesting. I thought Roxanne Dawson's computer voice, that was the other one I was really
Yeah.
considering picking in Dead Stop, was really good because it's so cold and so clinical. But Mestral captures your heart as a character, you know, just like immediately smashes onto the scene as a character you've never met before, who at the end, 42 minutes later, you really care about and you really are happy for, and happy that he's found a place that he wants to be. Super interesting for those who like don't read Star Trek books. There's actually a great series of Star Trek books that by Dayton Ward, I think he wrote 3 of them, that are effectively about, you know, Mistral in the 20th century, and pulls in other elements of 20th century Star Trek time travel that you see throughout the franchise. And he's just a great character. And it's so interesting, this idea of a Vulcan who is a Vulcan, but one who just kind of decides he likes being on it. You know, he likes humans. He sort of sees the best in them. And yeah, like, so 100%. J. Paul Boehmer as Mistral, the obvious standout choice.
I'm so glad we matched on that one, because I was thinking to myself, man, if he doesn't pick this, then he's really just going for the second best.
Best production design.
Ooh, I like this one. Okay, so for me, this was really obvious. Like, I thought about for a second doing T'Pol's new wig, because it is slightly better than the season 1 one, and it makes a huge difference. She also changed her eyebrows slightly. She does that every season. I don't know if anybody out there knows that. I mean, if you listen to me talk, you do. But every season, she and her makeup artist would change them just a little bit to make them a slightly more like expressive. And I think that's just cool. But really, my favorite part of the production design in this is the Suliban glow up for season 2. Like, they changed, and not, if you watch casually, you're not going to notice, right? They're the green pebbly guys in the red outfits with all the stripy metallic things on them, right? But when you really look at it and you're looking closely, their uniforms got way more complex and way more detailed, kind of like the time tubes with Daniels got just that little bit of spit and polish. Same thing with that. Their makeup got better, and it got better to the point where, like, it's now like on their teeth and gums, they must have given them some of that like oral dye. Their gums are different colors. The edges of their eyes are rimmed better. And like, when you see their hands in close up, the makeup now goes from their hands onto their nails in this really cool, like, much more organic looking way. The effects got better when they do all of their Sulabani stuff, and their ships look a little crisper. Like, just everything about the Sulaban just got a little boost for season 2 on. And I just really appreciate that. And I think it's one of those things that a lot of people don't notice, but now that I love it every time when I get to Shockwave Part 2. I'm like, oh yeah, the Suliban get better and cooler looking this season. So I wanted to call that out.
It's just such a shame that there's more Suliban behind than there is ahead at this point.
I know. They deserve a revisit too.
Yeah. Ross Webster, in the last episode where we were talking about the end of the season, he's a big Suliban fan as well. And like, I totally agree with both of you that they are a super interesting race, and one that, you know, Enterprise had sort of started to peel back the layers on, but still feels like there was more there that they could have explored. But ultimately, they sort of got sidelined with the decision to take the Temporal Cold War in a different direction for season 3, with the Sphere Builders, and then to sort of close it down entirely in season 4.
Well, I would like to see where they are in the, Academy and Discovery era. They supposedly was a kid talking to Captain Ake at the Bajoran ice cream day, right?
Yeah.
But that didn't look like a Suliban. I only know that because I read the credits. So let's go back and figure out where they are and get all that back history that we are curious about.
So my pick is all the scenes on the outer hull of Enterprise in
Yes.
Minefield, and particularly
Yes.
the scene where the hull plate detaches and floats away from the ship, and then the mine explodes. You know, it's on the exterior of the ship is not a place that we spend a lot of time in Star Trek, right? You can immediately think of some of those super iconic shots where it happens. Motion picture where they're walking towards Vija, True Q where they go on the outside of the ship, First Contact where they have the battle on the deflector dish. But two of those examples out of the three that I just gave came from the movies. You don't get it a lot in the TV show, but this is an episode where they spend some time on the outer hull of Enterprise. And like, I love just like these little details, like each of the hull panels are labeled so you know which one is which.
It's so practical.
Yeah, it's so practical. You kind of get a really good sense of the scale of the ship. The CGI is pretty good for its day, you know, in terms
It's better
of
than it was season 1. It definitely got a summer glow up too.
Yeah, you know, like you've got you obviously have the sort of practical set part, but then that blends pretty seamlessly with the CGI, you know, sort of rest of the ship and some of the wide shots. So yeah, it's really cool. We got to spend some time on the outer hull of Enterprise, and yeah, so that's my best production design moment. My quick runner up is the Vulcan phaser in Carbon Creek, because that is super retro and super cool, but doesn't quite hold a candle to spending half an episode outside of the ship.
Yeah, I love the outside of the NX-01. We get back to it a little bit in season 3 and Damage, right? When they've got the little thing spewing out. And I think that's because they saw how well it worked in here. And I do also love, you can see kind of inside to the ship and like how this is interesting. And it's just pretty. And sometimes you just want your Star Trek to be pretty. And it is. I love that decloaking shot too. You're just like, oh, I know what's coming.
Best quiet moment.
Ooh, okay. So this one was hard for me. And I almost picked the scene in Carbon Creek where Tamir is meditating and Jack comes in and talks to her about it, because I really like how simple and quiet that scene is. And I like the fact that they never, not for 1 second, play Jack as having some sort of attraction to Tamir. It's just an interest in this person who's more worldly than he is. And that is a beautiful scene that deserves a little shout out. But the one that I really like is the end of Shockwave Part 2, with the Archer comes to her quarters, right? And T'Pol was sleeping and resting. I mean, she just got tortured not that long ago. She deserves to have a good night's sleep, right? But Archer comes in and immediately is like, I'm not sure, somebody might have seen me. And she's like, it's okay. Like, he's thinking about her like that. And then he comes in and does such an Archer Scott Bakula move. He squats down next to her bed, right? He never sits. He doesn't lean. He just squats there. Like, this man never skips leg day, right? He puts himself lower than she is and is telling her, I think you put it over the top. I think it was, you know, what you said. Thank you. They're having a real open, vulnerable, trusting moment here, which is great.
I think that's a great pick. It's another one of these really nice moments of relationship building between Archer and T'Pol that is the relationship that they actually have, not the ridiculous manufactured relationship in A Night in Sickbay, which is that sort of familial relationship, that strong, deep bond that develops between them that is not romantic and not sexual in any way, but is very loving in a very chaste way. And like, this scene is a great sort of moment, especially when you kind of, you know, reach back into Shockwave Part 1, where T'Pol comes to Archer's quarters halfway through the episode and tells him to snap out of it, you know, and like that he should be fighting for his career and for his crew. And now this is sort of like his like little moment of like thanks for that and for her putting it over the top with the Vulcans. So yeah, definitely love that.
Well, and they end with that little zinger that you can only do back and forth with people that you really care about in that certain way, where he's about to leave and she goes, I still don't believe in time travel. And there's like half a beat and he goes, the hell you don't, right? Like, those are those moments that just make me happy, because from way back in Broken Bow, where, you know, he's going to knock her on her ass, to that moment, the change and the growth is just beautiful. And I love that about their relationship.
My runner-up for this moment, which we've talked about some already, is the Archer and Reed scenes in Minefield when they're on the hull, and the one where Reed's like, he doesn't say, I don't think you're a very good captain, but he is like, I have criticisms of your command style. But my actual pick, which we've also talked about a lot already, so I won't dwell on too much, but it can't be anything other than my actual pick, is the debate between Tamia, Mistral, and Strawn in the kitchen about humanity that ends with Mistral saying, I need to leave because I Love Lucy is on tonight. It's just a really nice scene. It's such a Star Trek scene, you know, and the great thing about it is you have a lot of these scenes in Star Trek, but normally they're about someone else. It's about the Bajorans in Deep Space Nine, or it's about one of the various industrial planets that the Enterprise has encountered in The Next Generation. But here in Enterprise, it's a conversation about Earth. Like, what is the potential of these people? Who are they as full people? Are they all the good things? Are they all the bad things? Are they some combination of the two? And the scene lands really well for me because it is a really great deconstruction of humanity's potential for both greatness and disaster, you know? And like having these three characters kind of circle each other around their perspective of humans after having spent some time with them is it's such great Star Trek, but it's in a 1950s kitchen, right? Like, which is such a great indication that Star Trek can be lots of things.
And again, it's Enterprise around a table, right?
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Best loud moment.
Oh, this one was hard. There were a lot of loud moments in these ones, right?
A lot of loud moments, yeah.
So I thought about the moment where Archer comes through the time portal and he looks like future guy and he's all like distorted. And Silik is like, I can't understand you. What did you say? And he like hauls out, kicks him full on in the chest and is like, I said you're an ugly bastard. And like, it's a perfect moment, right? Like it's such an Archer Silik moment. And that's so fun. But really, I wanted to call out the whole sequence at the end of Dead Stop where Trip has just been standing there for, wasting time, killing time, asking for the manager, being a space Karen, right? Like, I'm not so sure about any of this. The customer's always right in my world. And then as soon as the station locks on, he's like, yep, gotta go. And everything from that moment, when you realize, oh my goodness, they're going to blow up this warp plasma that they gave, right? And then they do, and there's that first explosion, and then they're on the bridge and they're like, and Archer's like, wait for it. It's got to be 3,000 degrees Kelvin, right? Just wait for it, Malcolm. And then everything starts to blow. And the smile that Malcolm has right there that like, yeah, we did this. We blew this up. Because the man loves to blow stuff up. And you see the whole station just and then off goes Enterprise. Like, that just feels like such a win in that episode. So that had to be the one that
I love this because I was coming into this episode with two picks. My runner-up pick being the one you just picked, blowing up the warp plasma in Dead Stop. And my pick being, I said you're an ugly bastard in Shockwave Part 2.
This is why we're friends.
And the thing I love about both moments is they're the fist pump moments, right? They're the fist pump moments at the end of the episode. The plan worked. In Shockwave Part 2, it's a plan that's sort of been hatched and executed over the majority of the episode. Mm-hmm. And especially after Silik has captured the Enterprise crew, tortured at least two of its senior officers. Yeah. To get a punch to the mouth like that at a moment when he's being a sniveling, groveling, really just sort of execrable character. It's just a real yeah, that's right. You punch him in the mouth, Jonathan Archer. And it's a great line. I said you're an ugly bastard. It's just it's a fun line. It's a fun moment. And the warp plasma blowing up in Dead Stop is exactly the same thing, right? It's a real fist pump moment. And it's also the other thing that the two of them share is even though I said you're an ugly bastard is like a Jonathan Archer moment. If you track it back 2 or 3 minutes, there's a lot of ensemble stuff in the lead up to that one big payoff moment. In the same way that there's a lot of ensemble stuff in the lead up to the Dead Stop payoff moment, because they're trying to get through the corridor, and then it's the stuff on the ship, and as you say, Trip in the kind of buying time. So I love episodes that have the ensemble all contribute towards the big climax.
Yep.
And both of these moments have that whole...
I've reconfigured our warp field to match the chronometric readings of the Borg sphere.
Recreate the vortex, Commander.
Aye, sir.
All decks report ready.
Helm standing by.
Mr. Data, laying a course for the 24th century. I suspect our future is there waiting for us.
Course laid in, sir.
Make it so.
Okay, looking at these 5 episodes and thinking about the entire Star Trek story, Abby, what do you think these 5 episodes add to the narrative? How do they connect with other Star Trek, other things they set up, or things they pay off?
All right. Well, we have talked about this one a bunch of times already about this is where we get some more Romulan stuff, early Romulan stuff, right? Not necessarily seeing Romulans, but we're talking about them. We're interacting with them. We realize that the Vulcans know about them because with Romulan, it's Romulan. Like, wow, yeah, like this is going to be a big thing. This is going to continue through Enterprise and beyond. We already know some things about them from other series. This is the biggie, right? The Romulan stuff. But we also called into question first contact between Vulcans and humans, which, I mean, when you think about the franchise, that's been a big tentpole. So that's interesting, right? And the temporal Cold War goes all through these first bits of Enterprise. And you've got the whole Daniels Kovich thing going on there. And to see shades of both of those next to each other is kind of fun. And to think that the Kovich we see in Discovery and some of the decisions he makes and what he says and doesn't say back to this moment with Daniels, where he made a huge mistake and really screwed stuff up. And to think about how that has impacted him throughout all those 900 years that we don't know about, like there's so much story there. I want a series, a mini-series, or whatever on the temporal Cold Wars. I want to follow the transition between Daniels to Kovich and know some of those things in between, because what a cool thread to have picked up years and years and years later.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about this on the last episode, that as I was looking at the timeline for the 31st century, these events take place 15 years before the burn. So I was like, I want the show that starts with this and ends with, and 15 seasons later ends with the burn, because I think that's a really interesting like resolution to the temporal wars / Cold War, and then pivoting into this big disaster for the Federation. It's just this really interesting period of Star Trek history, and one that's created sort of by accident.
Yeah.
Just by the like 2 completely different sets of production decisions that were made about, oh, Archer's gone into the future in Shockwave to some distant point in the future, and oh, the burn happened and it lasted for 150 years from the year that Discovery arrives in the 32nd century. So temporal Cold War stuff, obviously. Yeah, this was supposed to be the sort of kickoff to a very long Romulan arc that was going to play out over 7 seasons, and that obviously, got shortened, but we still get a lot of really great Romulan stuff in season 4 that is seeded here, that then seeds all of the Romulan stuff that comes after in TOS, in Strange New Worlds, in TNG, all the way through Deep Space Nine and Voyager. So yeah, and it's fun too, because it's these like first quick encounters and first little mentions with a race that we know a ton about and have met before and know really well. And so that's really fun to kind of go back to the beginning and mispronouncing the name. I also love the references in Carbon Creek, there's obviously that piece you mentioned of like this completely reinterprets first contact as actually second contact. But then there's those nice little moments where Trip kind of calls back to first contact, because he's like, no, first contact was in Bozeman, Montana. I've been there. There's a statue, a statue of Zephyr Cochrane, which Archer has a model of in his quarters, and I have a model of on my desk, and is then seen later in Lower Decks and is referred to in Star Trek First Contact. So it's all like it's just these like fun little moments where you're kind of seeing and hearing about things that just make the Star Trek universe feel really connected and like it is one big story.
Yeah, well, I mean, and if you really want to think about it as one big story, just add in the wrinkle of like the Travelers and Wesley in the temporal Cold War too, and you have a whole nother branch to go off on. So yeah, it's fun how all those things get reconnected and how modern Trek is filling in blanks just like Enterprise did. So great times.
Transfer of data is complete.
Well, that's all the time we've got for this episode of Warp Factor 5. You've heard our ratings for these 5 episodes, but I want to hear from you. What ratings do you give Shockwave Part 2 Through a Night in Sickbay? Let me know via Blue Sky and Threads, where you can reach me at Alex T. Perry, or X, where I'm at Alexander T. Perry, or you can email the show at warpfactor5@trekcore.com. Make sure to also tell me your favorite series regular performance, guest performance, production design, quiet moment, and loud moment, and we'll cover all the feedback we get at the end of each season. Abby, thank you so much for joining me on Warp Factor 5. How can people contact you if they want to continue the conversation?
Well, if you want to contact me, I'm at Abby M. Sommer. That's Sommer, not like the season. I'm around most places, mostly on Blue Sky, but if you find me somewhere else, I will try to find you back. And if this whetted your appetite for listening to Enterprise content, my podcast, First Flight Pod, is all over the places, anywhere that you can find your podcast. Come listen to us. Right now, by the time this comes out, we are near the end of the 4th season, and we've got all sorts of fun stuff planned for the big end of the wrap and beyond. So if you want to listen to me talk more about Enterprise, find us there.
And if you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast player of choice. And for all your Star Trek news needs, in addition to our extensive media archives of all things Star Trek, I hope you will keep your senses locked to trekcore.com. Well, thank you, Abby. Thank you to all of my listeners. And until next time, take us to Warp Factor 5. And owned by Trapezoid Media, LLC.